The K is in here, but it's, oh, here it is, a letter like this. When they go to print anything like this, in the old days, they had to put all of these in a composing stick like this. They would hold it and put all those letters. Now, these letters have got a little notch. See that little notch up there? Mm-hmm. They got smart after having to do all of this, making sure it was turned by hand. They put those notches. So if the notch isn't lined up, see, you can tell something's out of line. So they know to turn something. They came up with that. But that's one of the things the archaeologists are doing out here is they're going to find where the printing shops were and stuff. So when you come back one of these days, you're going to have a thing saying this is where Mr. Cotton's printing press or where Gail Borden's printing press was. Now this is out of a drawer here. And let me show you this. That's just another thing. Mr. Cotton had the first printing press here. It was a wood printing press, and the first book in Texas was printed right here. It was the rules and regulations in English because most people didn't speak Spanish yet. So they know what the Mexican government wanted them to do. Now this is just showing you how they pick these up and see these. See how it's got sort of a curve to it? That's where you get uppercase and lowercase comes from. You know, like your capital letters and your little letters, that's because they were in the uppercase or the lowercase.
So cool.
Yeah. Now this right here is this tray. Look at this. See, all of the numbers are up here. Just like on your, like on a laptop now, or when you're typing, that's their typewriter. This is showing you that when they're doing this, when they're putting it in this thing right here, it's got to look like this. So it comes out looking like that, and you can read it. It's basically upside down and backwards. And that notch helped them so they'd be sure and get that M in the right position. Now this over here just shows you what our keyboards look like now. Basically, that was their keyboard, this is our keyboard. And they still use proofreading marks just like they did in the old days. You know, when they proofreading before they put it in paper, they still use the same ones. Now this is, I told you about the other one, the first book in Texas. This one's even more interesting. This was made in New York by the Hoe Company. This is called the Devil's Tail, see? Every time you do it like that, this goes down, and you're going to have your newspaper and all your type in here with ink and paper, and it's going to print every one of your pages. Let me go get a paper and I'll show you. And you can have the pages.
It actually works. Oh, that's so cool.
Now, this, each one of all of these letters, all the marks, everything has to be put into the type. See, they've got every mark there. Then it's put out, it's inked, and then it's run up under here. That's some of the stuff we're waiting on. And then it goes like this. Every sheet, when they run as many with this printing on it, they dump it out. And boys were usually apprenticed to the printer, and it was their job to put it all back in here. So then they redid it and made the type for this side. So when that dried, they had to run it all back through and do the same thing.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. Now,
oh my goodness.
This is called the Devil's Tail. And I don't know all the terms for them yet, but every one of the printing press things relates to the devil. So it must have been one, you know, what kind of job. This right here is called a knuckle joint. See how it moves? But let me tell you something else about this printing press. You ever heard of William Barrett Travis? He was at the Alamo. You've heard of Alamo, hadn't you? Santa Ana? Well, he was killed at the Alamo. But before he was killed, he sent a letter back here written out like this. And it was all folded up. This came from the Alamo when they had the letter. The letter is in Austin. You can see it yet. It was all folded up in a courier's pocket. In other words, a guy on a horse had this folded up in his pocket or his bag, saddle bag, and he brought it back here asking for help. Not too many people got to see the original letter, so they gave it to the printer, and he printed it out, and that was their iPhone and their computer was to print it out and pass it out. So that's what this right here is, the letter. Now we have some, when we do school programs and we do printing, we have some little tabletop printing presses. The kids can see how it all goes together, and we have this set in a, it's already set in a plate, and that's this letter, and they get to see how you put the ink on it and print it. So if you still don't get your ink just right, you can't read it yet. See? So it's a lot of work to print it out. A lot faster the way we get to do it nowadays. Another interesting thing about the printing press here, have you ever drank Borden's milk? You heard me say Gail Borden? I bet when you go to the store or when you was growing up, you've drank Borden's milk. Well, this is the man that invented the milk process. This was about 15 or 20 years before he came up with that. Wow. He was a right-hand man, printer, survey, he and his brothers all out here. 0300, which were the first 297 families that came. Now, when they got the printing press here, they printed Travis's letter, and they were printing newspapers and whatever they could. Then they printed the Declaration of Texas Independence was printed here. It was signed at Washington on the brasses.
Crazy.
So printing press just like this, printed, here's the Declaration of Texas Independence, printed that on a big sheet. You can even buy those big sheets. We don't have any for sale yet, but you can have this paper. And that's the Declaration of Texas Independence. Then they knew Santa Anna had just killed everybody at the Alamo, killed everybody at Goliad, and he was headed this way. And they had what they call the runaway scrape. Have you ever heard of it? That's where all the Anglos especially were running because he said he was going to kill all of them. So they all panicked because he was on his way here. And it was, the men were mainly trying to fight, almost like an army to fight with Sam Houston. Well, the women and children and older people are the ones that really took off. Some of the men tried to come home and help them, but the weather was really nasty and muddy and bad. And so Mr. Borden sent the printing press to Harrisburg. Houston didn't exist yet. Harrisburg was the big town then. It was going to be on the coast and everything. Well, after it got burned by Santa Anna, Houston came in and took over. But he sent this printing press, one just like this, to Harrisburg. Mexican army caught up with it, captured the men, and threw the printing press in Buffalo Bayou. As far as we know, it's still in Buffalo Bayou. That's why we don't have the original one.
Wow.
But it's just like this, from the same company, the same era. I think they said our plate here might be a little bigger, but the way it looks, I'm sure they could get different size plates for this. And before long, this will be working where we can actually print things and stuff. We're still waiting on learning how to do it and some more pieces. It will be, they said it's going to be working here, and it will be working in our new one so we can do printing programs to show the kids how they got the news out. It's pretty neat.